We start with LeBron James, who, ever since the decision, has actively courted more responsibility, more voice, a role in building the roster. In Miami, it was, we're doing this and Chris Bosh is coming. And we're doing this and I want that guy, and that guy. And as the seasons wore on in Miami, he would choose the players he wanted to play with, or at least made his feelings known, and then had to run it by Pat Riley and get on the same page. When he left Miami, it was because there was still somebody in the way of him having complete control, and that was Riley. So he went back to Cleveland because there, Dan Gilbert, through gritted teeth, said, fine, you can have it all. You can take everything. You're the GM. You pick the coach. You have complete say. And we know that that was a point of friction, but that Dan Gilbert had to say yes. And so LeBron said, okay, we keep Kyrie. We want J.R. Smith. Give Tristan Thompson a bigger contract. Trade for Kevin Love. We want to do this, that, and this. And they had to do it. And it worked. And then he left to go to Los Angeles, and the same thing happened. It was, okay, LeBron leaves, but LeBron gets say in X, Y, and Z. LeBron didn't give up that responsibility. He's had that. He likes it. He wants it. He uses his agent and Maverick Carter and those guys to pull the strings to get AD in Los Angeles, and that's his bit. And because LeBron is LeBron, you kind of have to deal with that, because what comes with LeBron is winning and NBA Finals appearances and one of the greats of all time and an absolutely dominant performer. And yet, now in Los Angeles, 3 out of his 4 years, they've missed the playoffs altogether or been out in the first round. So now suddenly there's heat because this was a disgrace. This was clearly embarrassing. At least last year they won the play-in game and got to the first round of the playoffs. Now they didn't even do that. And so LeBron is asked about helping build the team, helping put this thing together. And here was LeBron yesterday discussing this.
I think the front office is going to do whatever it takes to help this ball club become a better ball club from top to bottom. They ask me my opinion, I give my opinion, but at the end of the day, they're going to make the decisions that they feel is best for the franchise. And it's my job to make sure I'm ready at the start of training camp and ready to lead the franchise and lead the team that's put on the floor.
So there's already now the distancing of player from front office for LeBron. The front office is going to do what the front office wants to do, put us in a position to win, what they think is the right thing. My job is on the floor. So here is LeBron now suddenly wanting to push himself away from the smoldering wreckage that is this roster. Yes. It is what it is. If they end up in the NBA Finals, LeBron is certainly not saying, hey, the front office did it all. I was just playing. They did what they needed to do. They built a great team. No, of course, because it was a disaster to LeBron, now distancing himself from those decisions. But it didn't stop there. Russell Westbrook also spoke. And Russ believes that he never had a chance to succeed in Los Angeles because Frank Vogel hated him like a teacher that hated a kid, hated a student. Day one of the semester, Russ never had a chance.
Throughout the season, as you guys seen, and a lot of you guys not here, but who may be here, may have wrote or put out sources may say, or the famous source of all the different stories that came out about myself, and whether it's between me and the staff, me and Frank, me and the fans, there's just so many made-up stories that are not true. It's just always having to fight against that constantly. That's a part of not giving a fair chance. It's like, okay, now I got to fight against this made-up story. I got to fight against this one. Now I got to fight against this one. Now I got to fight against this one, when strictly what I've always been done and never had a problem with in any organization that I've ever been to. is doing my job at a high level, coming to work, competing, being professional. And that's strictly what, I always try to do.
Sources! Reports! I didn't have a fair shot. I was trying to defend myself against these sources the whole season. Not only was it anonymous sources haunting Russell Westbrook and the Los Angeles Lakers, but also his own coach was against him.
I'm not sure what his issue was with me, or I'm not sure why, but I can't really give you an answer why we never really connected. Maybe, that's something that he has to answer, but I never, from the get-go was feeling like I was having to try to prove myself to him and my capabilities and what I've been able to do for this game. And it's unfortunate, but it's really not kind of out of my hands.
Oof. So LeBron distances himself from the roster makeup. That's the front office. Russ blames the media, sources, and his coach. Sensing a vibe here? Nobody wants to take responsibility for what happened. And that's why it happened. There it is. You've got guys going to the Hall of Fame, guys who are part of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, guys who have made NBA finals. LeBron has won NBA championships, a roster filled with accomplished players. And nobody can honestly assess this because they're all pointing fingers. It's everybody else. It's everybody else but us. That's why this happened. And I'm a LeBron fan. I think LeBron's been unfairly criticized for a long time for stuff that was idiotic from fans looking for things to hate about him. And there's been the Jordan defenders. There's been the LeBron haters. There's been a long line of people that just lined up to try to find things to hate about LeBron. But this right here is a totally valid reason to be frustrated by LeBron. You're one of the greatest players of all time. And yes, you did perform well when on the floor. But you also must take responsibility for helping piece this thing together and for it getting so sour so quickly. You cannot distance yourself from all of that. And for Russell Westbrook, please, just save it. For Russell Westbrook to sit there, come to an organization that has 1 billion banners, to come back home to Los Angeles to be a conquering hero, to play alongside one of the greatest players ever to live in LeBron, and to sit there and say, I never had a chance because sources, because there was stuff written, because the coach didn't like me, is so immature. It is so passing the buck. It is just, unfortunately, so Russell Westbrook. At his heart, I don't think he's a terrible guy, but this tells you all you need to know about Russell Westbrook. Imagine going to a team that won the NBA championship 2 years ago and knowing this is the only box unchecked on your resume. You've done the stats. You've averaged a triple-double for a season. You've won an MVP. You've done the stats. You're in the Hall of Fame. That's that. You're good. The only thing you haven't done is win a championship. And going to LA and not saying, whatever it is that you need me to do, I'll do. I can do it that way. I can do it this way. How do I fit here? Because I just need to win. That's all I need to do. However that works, I'm in. And instead, bristling and bucking and barking at everything that may go against you because you don't get to do it the way you want to do it. The entire season was Russ punching against the air. The entire season was him fighting with everybody. It was fighting with the fans who were booing and the critics that didn't like what the team was doing, and apparently Frank Vogel and the media that was writing things and asking him questions. The whole year was him punching the air. And at the end of the day, who or what does Russell Westbrook blame for the problems this year? The sources and the head coach. He even brought up an anecdote yesterday that when he first got there, he sent champagne to the hotel room of Frank Vogel for his anniversary, because that's just the type of guy that Russell Westbrook is. He said he's never had a problem with anybody. Never had a problem with teammates, never had a problem with coaches, never had a problem with staffers. Loves everybody. He's such a good guy that he sent a bottle of champagne to his head coach for his anniversary. Now, number one, ask some of his teammates if he's never had a problem with teammates. I think you get a different answer than Russell Westbrook said. Number two, when you got to go so far as to say, and I sent him a bottle of champagne, again, it tells you everything you need to know. I'm a good guy. Let me tell you about when I was a good guy. Let me tell you about this really nice thing that I did because I'm such a nice guy. I really liked him. I don't know why he didn't like me. Is it possible that Frank Vogel got frustrated because Russell Westbrook refuses to play defense? Is it possible that Frank Vogel got frustrated because Russell Westbrook was unable to adjust the style of play? Is it possible Frank Vogel really wanted it to work but felt as though that the roster was kind of foisted upon him without much say because LeBron wanted it this way? Is it possible that Frank Vogel was telling Rob Pelinka, we need DeMar DeRozan, we don't need Russell Westbrook, and they went with Westbrook anyway, and he was watching DeRozan have Player of the Month accolades over the course of the season? Is it possible that Frank Vogel's not a perfect guy, but was watching his career get elbowed aside for the desires of the players, knowing that the players actually weren't completely invested? I mean, all of those things are in play, and when I heard yesterday what I heard, I said, well, that's the reason why right there. It's a bunch of guys that are so highly accomplished they cannot take blame. They are so within their own ego that they simply cannot admit we blew it. We blew it. Is there something to be said for the injuries? No question. And LeBron cited those yesterday. What happened? We didn't get to play again. We didn't get to play with one another enough. And that's partially true. But the other part was everything was negative, nothing worked, and everybody blamed everybody else. And you wanted Russ, and you got Russ. And what did Russ do? Russ blamed sources. I couldn't do my job. I was fighting against the reports all the time. Well, that's a you decision. If you couldn't play your basketball because you were worried about unnamed anonymous sources, that's a you problem. Because plenty of other players have dealt with that stuff before and still succeeded. That's your fault, Russ. That's nobody else's.